Well, first of all, thank you very much for that round of applause. It's always better to get it before because you're not guaranteed a round of applause afterwards, depending on what you say. Really, I want to thank both Chamber and UKAI for asking me along today, but also giving me the opportunity to help host this event. Partly because when I was the Minister for Technology, Innovation and Life Sciences in the Department of Health and Social Care. And I just was fascinated by actually how much technology, and I know this is a very general term, can transform our whole system of health and care. There is so much potential there. And sometimes I just used to get a bit frustrated that we weren't going faster, if I'm honest about it. And this is not to criticise people who work in the NHS or work in the Department of Health and Social Care. But there were some structural barriers I felt that had to be overcome. But of course, you're dealing with people's lives as well. And when something goes wrong for whatever reason, that will be the story, and you have to deal with it. So, compared to many other areas, quite often getting that solution right is actually very critical and could be the difference between life and death. So, look, I'm very excited by what AI can do. I'm very excited by the fact that actually the NHS, almost uniquely amongst health services in the world, has a large amount of data, home data, that if used appropriately, and as long as we take account of people's concerns about opting out and the use of that data not being sold on to multinational enterprises and people having control over that data, and I think that's something that we have to be very aware of, because if we don't get those civil liberties organisations on side, then people will opt out, and so we can build the best system in the world, but we won't have the data to drive it. And I'm a Jimi Hendrix fan, and I quite often quote Jimi Hendrix: "You can build a castle made of sand, but they fall into the sea eventually." And therefore, it's important that we get the public on side to understand the benefits of using these huge amounts of data, these data sets, being able to process these data sets to spot trends, spot patterns, and actually help identify problems and actually move towards this agenda of preventative health in many ways. The priorities of the current Secretary of State and the current government, I may be a different party, but I completely agree with the move from analog to digital, and the other ones. Don't ask me to quote them all. It's really important. And one of my other challenges when I was a minister was people would write to me and say, "I've got this amazing solution." Now, actually, you'll get lots of people writing to you saying they've got this amazing solution, and some of them will actually have this amazing solution, but some of them will be good salespeople or good talkers, and maybe you need all that. And how do you sort all that out? And one of my frustrations, if I'm honest about it, was I would say to my officials, well, who can they write to? How do they get into the system, whatever that means? And people will find, you're entrepreneurs, so you find ways to get into the system. You might go via your local trust, you might go via a primary care centre, you might try and go via NHS England, you might find another way when we had NHSX or the accelerators and all those projects. But I'm still frustrated at how do we get the technology that's out there, today's technology, not let alone tomorrow's technology, into the system to improve our system of health and care. And how do we make sure that we are digitising our records that we have, when you think about how much is still analogue, and sometimes actually there are plates still being biked across London rather than digital photos being shared. How do we make sure that's all joined up? So we have not only a system of better prevention, but we can identify some of the trends and some of the health concerns and the care concerns that we all have. So one of the things I want to do in opposition is to be a constructive opposition rather than just bash everything the government comes up with, and also try and help get companies into the system, as it were. And people still write to me as a shadow minister, and they'll say, and I'll write to the minister's office and say, who can they contact? And quite often it's an email address. Now, I think we can do a bit better than that. Now, I had a meeting recently, or a conversation with, is anyone here from the Health Innovation Network? Good. Well, talk to him, because they said, look, actually, we're the entry, and I'm just trying to assess that. The other thing I'm trying to do here is host a number of events with some of the big companies, but with some of the startups. I sit on the board of the advisory board, unpaid, of the Startup Coalition. And I think there's so much exciting opportunities to get some of the exciting stuff that you're doing into the system. And I want to be able to help that in a constructive way, but also understanding that any minister will be challenged by lots of people saying, we've got a great solution, but you are all at different levels of development. Some of you may be your MVP, others might be, see, I know the acronyms. So some of you may actually have a solution ready to go. And it's actually understanding also what's required from the system, what boxes you have to tick or what barriers you have to overcome. There's also the problem in this country of scale-ups. There are lots of really good startups, and I was on the Digital and Communications Committee when we did our inquiry into scale-ups. And a lot of people can't scale up in this country. But one of the things I found in one of my first meetings as a minister was I was talking to some life sciences startups, and they said to me, why aren't people investing in us? And I thought, oh, hold on a minute, you might think you've got a brilliant solution, but do you understand what investors are looking for in their investor profile? And I think what we need to do is more of this, getting people like you who think you've got a great solution and you want to scale up or grow or get into a system, but also getting investors into the same room as you to say, well, actually, when we invest in something, this is what we look for. This is the return we look for. This is our time frame. So we can cut down that sort of that disconnect or misunderstanding or lack of knowledge about what both sides want. Hopefully, we can better connect you. So I really welcome the fact that UKAI and Chamber have put on this event. I was about to say I want to help, but please don't all write to me at once. I'll need a system to sort out my emails. But I'm very happy to try and help facilitate getting people like you into the system, as it were, but hopefully getting ministers who are in government now to see whether they can change the system or make the system more open and more appealing. Now, you might say, well, actually, that trust works or that ICB works really well, but then how do we share that best practice from one area right across the country? Just because you're doing something great in one ICB, how do you get that elsewhere, where they might have other priorities or other health profiles, and and particularly the economic profile of that community? They might have other priorities. Some of their priorities might actually be quite basic priorities, maybe higher levels of people dying from lung cancer or people obese, whatever. But I also know you've all got solutions for these sort of things as well. So I will stop there because I can go on forever and geek out. I was a geek. I'm now the father of geeks, so I love all this stuff. But I think I should allow other speakers to come. But I'm really pleased that you've all come here today, come to Parliament, hopefully met some MPs, hopefully met some shadow ministers and ministers, but also you'll continue to have these conversations with policymakers, and also hopefully we can join up people like you with those who make decisions to make sure that we actually have one of the best systems of health and care in this country, whether that be the NHS or outside the NHS. But actually, we are world leaders. So we've got the potential here. We've got some of the brightest people in the world here. Unfortunately, we're not. We still attract people from all around the world. I'm very liberal on things like immigration, and I want to attract the best talent in the world. And I think we should be celebrating that. And actually, Britain, I think, benefits from all that. So, really looking forward to hearing some more of the ideas that you guys have got when we move next door at 5 o'clock, or maybe I've spoken too long. And then, just Ben and Tim will talk to me about how I can be more helpful to you. But thank you for inviting me.